If you're a network architect working with Cisco ACI, you've almost certainly run into this problem. You've got this beautiful multi-tenant environment, but now you need to give everyone access to shared services, things like DNS or internet access, without tearing down the very walls that keep them all separate and secure. It's a real head-scratcher, right? Balancing that flexibility with rock-solid security.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll dig into the shared services challenge itself. Then we'll look at ACI's built-in answer, Tenant Common. We'll break down the two main ways to share services, VRF versus bridge domain, and walk through a super common use case. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you'll want to remember.
All right, let's start with that central conflict. Imagine your ACI fabric is like a high-security apartment building. You've got different tenants, maybe they're different departments or even different companies, and they all have their own secure apartments. But they all need to use the same laundry room or the same gym. How do you give them access without letting them wander into each other's apartments? That's the challenge.
So, yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How do we poke a very specific, very controlled hole through those tenant walls so they can get to the services they need, but without compromising the integrity of the whole structure? Well, luckily, Cisco's ACI was designed with a purpose-built feature to solve this exact problem. And this is where ACI really shines with its elegant solution. It's a special pre-built tenant that's there by default called Tenant Common. Now, the key is to stop thinking of it as just another tenant. It's more like a foundational services layer for your entire fabric. It's the building's management office, providing utilities to everyone.
Okay, so what is Tenant Common exactly? Well, think of it as a central toolbox. It's a built-in tenant where you can create and store all your shareable network objects and policies. We're talking routing tables, security rules, you name it. Anything you build in this common space can then be shared out to all your other tenants in a really controlled and secure way.
And this diagram just paints the perfect picture. Look at how Tenant Common sits at the top. It's the designated service provider. Below it, you've got Tenant 1 and Tenant 2. And they are completely separate from each other, as they should be. The real magic is that they're both looking up to Tenant Common for services, using policies to control access, instead of trying to talk across to each other.
And it's not just one or two things you can share from this central toolbox. We're talking about the whole shebang. Security policies like contracts and filters, Layer 3 routing contexts like VRFs, Layer 2 segments like bridge domains, and even your connection to the outside world with L3 outs. The real power here is in reusability. You build your main internet gateway once in Tenant Common, and then every single tenant can use it safely.
Now you might be thinking, this sounds kind of complicated to set up, but check this out. It's incredibly simple. When you're configuring, say, Tenant 1, any contract you created in Tenant Common just shows up on a drop-down menu. You just pick it. But a quick pro tip here. The source material strongly suggests sharing filters instead of the whole contract. Why? Because it gives you way more granular control and you avoid accidentally linking the wrong application groups or EPGs. It's just a safer way to operate.
Okay, so there are basically two main ways to use Tenant Common to share services. Your choice really boils down to what layer of the network you're working at. Are we talking Layer 2 or Layer 3?
This actually comes down to a really simple question. Do your services and the applications using them need to be in the exact same IP subnet? If the answer is no, and let's be honest, 99 times out of 100 the answer is no, then you're going to share a common VRF for Layer 3 routing. Sharing a whole bridge domain is a much rarer design, usually for some very specific legacy requirement. This slide is perfect for seeing the difference side by side. On the left, you've got the common VRF model. See how Tenant 1 and Tenant 2 each keep their own separate bridge domains? Their Layer 2 worlds are totally isolated, but they share that one Layer 3 routing table from Tenant Common. Now look over at the right. They're all collapsed into one big shared broadcast domain. This visual makes it super clear why the model on the left is the standard for maintaining proper tenant separation.
All right, enough theory. Let's look at how you'd actually use this in the real world. The most common scenario by far is providing shared access to external services. The internet, a central DNS server, things like that. And here it is, the classic design. This is probably what you'll build. Notice that Tenant Common has one job here. It holds the shared VRF and the L3 out, which is your fabric's gateway to the outside world. All Tenant 1 and Tenant 2 have to do is link their networks to this one VRF. And the beauty of this is that it makes your life so much easier. You manage one exit point, one set of firewall policies, one routing configuration. It's clean, secure, and efficient. And check this out. This is the key configuration step, and it could not be simpler.
When you're setting up a bridge domain inside one of your user tenants, you don't create a new VRF for it. You just go to the drop-down menu and you pick the VRF that you already built in Tenant Common. That's it. It's literally that simple. That one little click is the glue that holds this entire shared services model together. Okay, so we've covered the what, the why, and the how. Let's boil all of this down into the most important things you absolutely need to remember when you're designing this for yourself.
All right, let's lock these in. First, Tenant Common is your go-to for anything shared. Make it your central hub. Second, remember that pro tip, share filters, not whole contracts, for better control. Third, sharing a common VRF is the default, standard, best practice design for any L3 service. And fourth, remember that the magic happens with that one simple config step, linking a tenant's bridge domain to the common VRF. But honestly, the most important takeaway is a question you should always be asking. And that question is right here. Tenant Common is an incredibly powerful tool for managing complex, multi-tenant environments. No doubt about it. But every layer of complexity adds a layer of management and troubleshooting overhead. So before you go all in on this, just take a step back and ask yourself, do I really need this level of strict separation for my design? Because sometimes the simplest design isn't just easier, it's also the most robust.